all the feedback forms have been handed over to you. You're requested to fill it in and hand it over after the tea session today at around 4 o'clock. We begin with our next session on international experience in skilling. This session will be chaired by Dr. Anand Sardeshmukh. Mr. Sardeshmukh, may I request you to please come on the dais? I would like to introduce our panelists for the next session, Mr. Dean Fox, Sector Development Manager from SEMTA. He's come all the way for this session from UK. Mr. Semta has over 10 years of experience in increasing responsibility within the R&D, technical and manufacturing sectors of the skill and... may I request you to kindly be seated? Sirs, can I request you to kindly, please, the session is in progress. May I request silence from this audience, please? Welcome, Mr. Dean Fox. He is a Sector Development Manager from SEMTA. He has over 10 years of increasing responsibility within the R&D, technical and manufacturing sectors of the steel and engineering market, 15 years of increasing responsibility in the sales and business development sector for both products and services. Mr. Chandra Kumar, he is the founder, co-chairman and CEO of Skillconclave. Please come on the stage. He is an entrepreneur with a track record of building and growing organizations with 25 plus years of experience, 15 plus years as CEO of a global IT service company. Over the last 6 years, he has focused on skills development in the country, advising LabourNet, bringing unorganized sector labor under an organized umbrella, and leading the SVE-TI project as a project director in India. Ms. Vandana Saxena Poriya, founder of the Get Through Guides. Vandana Saxena Poriya is an award-winning visionary who creates revolutionary learning experiences and skills in education to prepare people for the future. Mrs. Mrinalini Kher, co-founder and honorary secretary and trustee of Kherwadi Social Welfare Organization. As an honorary secretary and trustee of Kherwadi Social Welfare Association for last 25 years, co-founder and the moving spirit of Yuva Parivartan, a project of KSWA, has transformed lives of underprivileged school dropouts through skill development and livelihoods. Yuva Parivartan today is one of the largest NGOs in the field of livelihoods with a national presence, training over 1 lakh deprived youth in urban and rural industry as per year and connecting them to livelihoods.
Thank you, Manjari, and good morning to all of you.
May I request Dr. Anand Sardeshmukh to welcome all our panelists with a token of appreciation.
Well, we have a very good panel here, a diversified panel. We have, definitely some industrial experience, and there is one NGO which is doing excellent work all over Maharashtra in skill development. And skill development, as we all know, in India is still at a nascent stage, and a lot of things are being done, and we are trying to take this initiative further. We have been learning from the experiences outside, and we have been talking about the, the German experience, the British experience, the Swiss experience, and we are trying to take some good points from that. So here is an opportunity for all of us to interact with these panelists who are having the international experience in skilling, And I will start this session with Mr. Dean Fox. He is from SEMTA, which is an UKTI promoted scaling company, and they are especially in sector development, skill development activity. Mr. Dean Fox.
Morning, everybody. First of all, I'd just like to open by thanking all of the delegates here for giving me the opportunity to come along and speak today, and also for your time this morning. I hope that what I have to say will give you some insight into the way that the UK has developed and tackled skills during the last 60 to 100 years, and that you get some value from that. Thanks very much for the introduction. My name's Dean Fox. My background, as you heard earlier on, is essentially in engineering and manufacturing, but also in learning and development. I just wanted to give you an overview before I start, really, in terms of a little bit about myself, my background in a bit more detail, and a little bit more about SEMTA as an organisation. So, I started as an engineering apprentice 27 years ago, working in the steel industry with a then British Steel organisation. Following my apprenticeship, I spent 10 or 12 years progressing through the organisation, ending up as a principal metallurgist within the customer support section. So I looked after technical negotiations around commercial contracts for flat products as an industry. I was involved in projects, everything from Øresund Bridge in Sweden and Norway through to Tin Cow Bridge in Hong Kong. I then left the sort of technical engineering industry and moved into learning and development and skills. So for the last sort of 12 years, I've been involved working with either government bodies or private training providers within vocational and technical skills training prior to joining SEMTA. SEMTA as an organisation is a sector skills council in the UK. It's responsible for what's known as advanced manufacturing. So that covers everything from automotive, aerospace, rail, composites, as well as general engineering. It's a not-for-profit organisation. That doesn't mean to say it doesn't make a profit. It does make a profit. What it means is the profit that it makes is reinvested in initiatives to help develop its industry and the sectors it represents and the skills within those sectors. Give you a bit of an overview in terms of the UK. The UK government invests around about £11 billion sterling in post-16 education. Now that's in academic and vocational skills, so not just in sort of apprenticeships. But out of that 11 billion, it spends £1.5 billion specifically in the development of the apprenticeship programme, and another substantial amount in technical vocational skills which don't follow the apprentice programme. It does that because it recognises the value that it's vital for not only the future of our nation, but also that a skilled workforce stimulates not just the private sector, but also the industry and the economy as a whole. That growth can bring new jobs. It can also bring inward investment. And it creates a pool of skilled workforce that can be adapted right across a number of sectors and industry. And as that productivity is increased, it has far-reaching additional social benefits. So for every pound that the current government invests in the apprentice programmes, it returns about £28 to the economy. And that's based on recent statistics across a number of vital elements. So it's got a long history in terms of the UK, in terms of its investment in the programmes. But it does that because it sees the returns in terms of the economy on a national basis. I just wanted to touch on some key points about apprenticeships in particular. It's something that I'm personally quite passionate about in terms of my involvement in the organisation. And I'm not going to go through all of this, there's obviously lots of information there, but just a few key points. I wanted to echo some points that were talked about in the earlier discussion. What we found in the UK is that employer engagement is imperative. And we currently have over 1,000 employers across 70 different sectors who are involved in the development and redesigning of our current apprentice framework programmes and vocational education. There's also some key benefits in apprenticeships to employers. So you'll see there that 96% of employers who take on an apprentice say it benefited their business. Now that's not just a financial benefit, there's obviously a benefit in terms of new ideas, new fresh blood coming into the organisation, as well as other benefits surrounding that. There's a benefit to apprentices. So you'll see there that someone who completes a level 3 apprentice programme, similar to the one that I went through 27 years ago, over their lifetime they will earn around about £117,000 sterling more than an equivalent person, one of their peers who didn't go through that programme. So there's a benefit to the apprenticeship programme themselves. There's also a benefit to the economy, and we've touched on that already, that every pound invested by the government returns about £28 back to the economy. So there's some key benefits and some key values around why this programme has been so successful and why it gets the support that it does, both from the government and also from industry. We in the UK see apprenticeships and vocational education as a glue, if you like. It's the bit that binds the government and the industry and employers together. And it's not just about, it helps form the policy, but not just about the policy for the economy, but also the policy that's right for industry. And we see it as a strategic alliance, as we've shown there, rather than an us and them scenario. We as a Sector Skills Council, we play an intrinsic role within this strategic alliance. So as well as being the voice for some of the employers in industry and relating their comments and feedbacks through to government to try and help form and develop those policies, we're also working in reverse, implementing some of the initiatives that have been developed from that feedback, working with industry and employers across the country. We're involved in the development of national occupation standards, which are developed specifically with industry, for industry. And we're also working with training providers and awarding bodies to help support the development of the curriculum and frameworks that go alongside the national occupation standards that we've developed with industry. Currently the UK is going through what is probably the biggest change to its vocational education in the last 30 years. The development of what's become known as trailblazers. Engineering and manufacturing in the UK has always had a significant industry input. Employer engagement has always been at the heart of what it's done. But the government has recognised this, and it now wants to develop and roll that out across all of the sectors. So all the sector skills councils and all the sectors are now using this methodology. The idea behind this is to try and increase employer ownership in all the sectors, to try and simplify some of the standards across the sectors, and to improve the contextualisation of the training that we give, to ensure that the training that's provided and the skills that are gained are right for industry, they're fit for purpose, and they ensure that that industry not only meets the skills of today, but can meet the skills of tomorrow and beyond. It's developed a what have become industrial partnership groups. These are groups of 10 or more employers who work together, facilitated usually by a sector skills council, to try and look at existing standards, curriculum and qualifications and skills development specifically for their industry. There's about 140 of these groups currently operating in the UK with a remit to deliver up to 350 standards in the next 2 years. As I said, they're employer-led, so they're industry-led, but they're facilitated normally by a sector skills council or another body. SEMTA as a sector skills council is involved in more of those groups than any other organisation in the UK. We work at the heart of industry on an ongoing basis. I wanted to give you an overview about the skills funding landscape in the UK. So skills funding is provided by government, but it's delivered and managed by the skills funding agency, the SFA. It's channeled from them through colleges and private training providers, who then engage with employers and industry in terms of looking at what training they require and the delivery of the apprentice framework that meets their needs. The UK has had a long-held ambition to try and secure significant employer contribution on an ongoing basis. 16 education in the UK is largely funded directly from the government, as you've seen from the previous slides, both academic and vocational. It's looking to try and get industry involved in supporting that financially going forward. It looks likely that it will adopt a levy model, which is currently in use by over 50 countries already. And the idea behind that, it will be aimed largely at the larger employers. And the objective is to try and combat underinvestment in the sector, in the skills development. It's currently under consultation because there's obviously some questions that have come about in terms of how those funds are likely to be used, what will happen to some of the smaller SME type organisations in terms of their input and how they will benefit from the programme. But one of the key strategies is to change the current funding model and move from a push model to a pull model by providing funding direct to employers and the industry. So what does that mean? The current model, in terms of a push model, what do we mean by that? Well, you've got a skills funding agency, which is taking government funds and distributing that through training providers and colleges, usually in association with people like the Association of Colleges or group training associations across the UK. It channels that revenue into them. They then need to engage with industry. So the onus is on the training provider or the college to go out and engage with industry, find out what it is that they want and need, and try and help them to deliver the programs that are applicable to them, and try and drive the apprenticeship program and the development of apprentices nationally on an ongoing basis. The problem with that is the onus is then always on the training provider, and we're looking for more employer engagement on an ongoing basis, something that was touched on this morning. So to help drive that, we're moving to a new model, a proposed model, where the skills funding agency will still manage the funds. It will still disperse those government funds, but it will do that by providing it direct to employers. The employers will then select and work with an approved and accredited supplier for their training and skills needs provision. The advantage of that is to help drive the engagement so that employers will then have the responsibility, a mandate to look at how they spend that revenue that's given to them in terms of training and skills development. And they will then need to engage with a local or national training provider in terms of delivering that. It will also hopefully lead to some more flexibility and choice, where employers can then seek to work with suppliers that they would like to work with on an ongoing basis. The government's also implemented some additional initiatives, employer ownership pilots, EOP projects. And the idea behind this, again, was to try and drive employer engagement. So these are multi-million-pound projects. They're dedicated to specific sectors. Automotive was one of them that benefited from it. It's aimed at addressing industry needs that they define. So it's not a training provider or a college or a network or a group saying, we think the industry wants this and we're going to develop this program. It's the industry saying, this is what we need and want. And we need this funding support to be able to deliver it. And we've identified some partners we can work with. It's led by industry representatives, both large and small. And it has to deliver tangible and sustainable outputs. What I'd like to do just in closing really is to give you an example, a bit of a case study about how an organisation in the UK uses the apprenticeship model, what its benefits are, both to the employer and to the apprentice, and how those organisations over a period of time have used the system to develop an effective recruitment and skilling programme. If we take British Telecom as an example, they have what is termed to be a world-class apprenticeship programme. It's been running for almost 100 years. They personally, as an organisation, invest more than £120 million a year in their training programmes. The key things for them are that every member of staff, regardless of their position in the organisation, is given an opportunity to develop their skills. Every one of them has a development plan that reflects not only the business needs, but also the career aspirations of the individual. Those plans are reviewed quarterly with their line management to decide if they're on track, where else they would like to go, and whether there needs to be any improvements to the plan. And to give you some idea, since 2010, the organisation's trained over 10,000 apprentices. And again, those cover all sectors, not just their engineering division, but right through up to retail and customer service, right across their organisation. And currently, year to date, they've got over 2,000 apprentices still in their training programme. I want to emphasise the quality and the demand that therefore is developed from these types of programmes. So over 90% of their apprentice frameworks are completed. And to give you an idea of the demand, last year they had 500 places available and 24,000 people applied for them. So it gives you an insight into how valued some of these programmes are. They run 11 apprentice frameworks covering all aspects of the business, as I said, from engineering through to customer service. And they do that in association with their training providers and their college network that they work with. The key things for the business are that what they've realised is that apprentices are 7.5% more productive than any other employee from any background. And their apprentices show a net profit to the business compared to their colleagues. It's a real return on investment for an organisation. Benefits to the company. We just take that top one there, their staff retention. Overall, their retention increased, but if we just focus on one of their areas in the retail services sector, their retention was over 95%. Typically in that sector, they will have staff, an industry turnover of about 20 to 25% in staff. So you can see that one of the key benefits that they see is the retention, the long-term retention of their staff. The other thing is that because of that, the trainees value the training. So many of their trainees and apprentices now hold senior positions within the company. And one of the things that does is it embeds that culture within their organisation. So if your senior management team or your senior engineering people have been ex-apprentices, your current apprentices will see the opportunity that exists for them. That drives buy-in into the programme and it adds value to it, not only from the organisation point of view, but also from the apprentice. There's a couple of examples at the bottom, which is that one of the apprentices was part of the team that was worked on the London 2012 preparation. So they're not just trainees that are following someone else in terms of understanding what to do, they're adding real value to the organisation. And one of their apprentices managed the implementation of over 300 work placements while he was still undertaking his own apprenticeship programme. So again, they're not just viewed as trainees at the time, they're given real responsibility. And part of that comes from the depth of the programme ensures that some of the soft skills that sometimes are missing when you get direct academic qualifications, so the teamwork, being able to manage people, communication skills, they're all developed as part of the programme, and that comes through. In closing, I just wanted to say that I mentioned it right at the beginning. I stand before you as an ex-apprentice, and I speak with real passion about this model simply because it gave me all the opportunities that I've had in my life. I wouldn't be here today speaking to you if I hadn't started an apprentice programme 27 years ago. And that, again, not only just speaks volumes for our model, but also for the buy-in that people see. Finally, thank you very much for your time. I hope you've had some value from what we've talked about, and I look forward to speaking to you all later on in the day as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. It was quite a comprehensive presentation. I see a lot of similarities between the model which has been adopted in India here in skill development, emphasis on sectoral skill development. And in India too, the apprenticeship training program is more than 50 years old now, and initially it did give good results, but later on I think something went wrong, and probably in the operational areas, there were some problems which were not handled properly. With that, may I now request Chandrakumar, the founder of Skillconclave, to present his Swiss experience and how it's being implemented in India. Chandrakumar.
A very good morning to all of you, and thank you for inviting me to share my experience. I must tell you that I'm not a Swiss national, I'm an Indian national, and I have had the opportunity to go deep into the Swiss vocational education system over the last 6 to 7 years. It all started with an initiative from the Swiss government and the Indian government. In 2008 is when the Commerce ministries met, and they decided saying, can Switzerland help India, transfer its model? So I'm going to just share some of the highlights of the Swiss system and how I think we can learn from it and how we can adapt it in India. And that's what Skillconclave is trying to do for the last few years. As you can see, we have Swiss partners. We have exclusive partnership with Switzerland. The Swiss government supports Skillconclave. In India, NSTC we are a partner of NSTC, and NSTC also has taken an equity in Skillconclave. So that shows the importance it gives to our model, but it has been quite a challenge for us to move forward. I've also mentioned that we have to, and we did, and we continue to do so, that we are adapting the Swiss model. We cannot replicate a model from one country to another. It's obvious for many reasons. So let me start with some few facts which are related to vocational education and training, and it's related to the productivity, efficiency, and quality of a nation. Look at Switzerland. It's a small country, surrounded by five, six countries, so which means no sea route, and very low on natural resources other than water because of the snow which they have. And it has established itself as a country where everything they do is focused on excellence and quality and productivity. A small, rich country, to be productive and to be actually competing in the world, it's not easy. We all know that even a company, when it gets rich, it starts to become careless. We individuals also, when we start to have a little more money, we start to become careless. We become less efficient. But this is one country I found that they have managed to keep that efficiency and productivity and quality and precision as their mantra to succeed in the world. You must also know that Swiss companies, the major market for the Swiss company is not Switzerland. It's a small country, 8 million. So the major market for all Swiss companies, at least the bigger ones, is all over the world, which means they have been able to adapt their quality, adapt their productivity, adapt their costing and pricing so that they can compete in a country like India also, or America, or any other part of the world. It's also interesting to note that Switzerland, just not too far away, maybe 50 years or 100 years ago, was not a very rich country. And it was primarily only an agri-country, farm-based, very little farming because of the climate and other reasons, but that was, dairy and farming was one of the major part of the economy. But today, the World Competitive Reports puts Switzerland as number one, as a business competitive nation. And it is not just funds. It's definitely to do with its people, the ability to bring its people to a very, very high level of quality focus and productivity, which is what I feel has happened in the vocational system in Switzerland, which I will try to enable. Some of the highlights, very, very interesting highlights. I start with highlights and then tell you who are the participants in the Swiss model and how does this actually work. And we can learn from that. We can at least take some ideas from there and also try to, implement some of them for our future. First and foremost, I think what's fascinating is the Swiss school system, 9th grade is the compulsory schooling, which is up to 9th grade, it's a standard schooling, like we have maybe up to 10th grade. At 9th standard, actually the students have a choice to go either the vocational stream or the academic stream. And you know how many people across the country go vocational? 70%. Which means 70%, almost 70% of every 100 students at 9th grade choose to find a vocational path for themselves. What is also interesting is that they are also choosing based on their passion and aspiration, which means there is a thinking of the student to say, I'm interested in a hotel industry, I'm interested in a tourism industry, I'm interested in a law, I'm interested in banking, and he can choose a vocation related to that. There are more than 240 vocations defined for the country, which means every working person, in a particular job role or in a particular vocation is predefined, and the students have a choice to go to one of those 240 vocations, including carpentry, including boat building, including an administrative person, including a PR person, HR person, everything is defined as a vocation. Another interesting thing is I would say is one of the highlights in how Switzerland has managed to do it, is that they've been able to get the industry, all industry, across all sectors, to actually come and recruit apprentices at 9th grade. We're talking about the age of 15 or 16 years, boys and girls of the school. The companies actually are recruiting apprentices according to their demand. They know the demand in their industry, they know the demand in the sector. They actually try to market those vocations to the schools, explain to the students, and then recruit them as an apprentice, which means the next 3 to 4 years, these students are working in the company as an apprentice. They're trained, they're working, they're certified, and they become industry ready within the next 3 to 4 years. Almost all students by 15 to 20, I'm talking about 70% of the country, are 100% industry ready. Now what do you mean by industry ready? It's not just the technical aspects of that vocation. It's also the working aspects, the work skills of an industry. Knowing about safety, knowing about environment, knowing about disaster management, all that is built into the program. Which means that at a young age of 20, 70% of school students of Switzerland have the ability to work independently in their vocation in any organization within Switzerland. Be it a hotel receptionist, be it a hotel back-end accountant, or be it a hospital staff, everyone is trained, assessed, certified, and then ready to launch into their career. I'll also explain to you how this whole thing is also working on an apprenticeship mode, like Bob said, and is also working on a public-private partnership mode. The whole design of the system is such that everyone plays its role. 50% of the funding comes from the government in different ways, and the 50% of the funding for the training is done by the industry or the company. But what is interesting to note is that 50% of the money which is spent by the companies comes back to the companies in the form of productive time during this apprenticeship, which means net the companies are not spending. And overall, the government is spending only 50% of the cost of the total requirement of a very high quality, very broad-based vocational training on a particular career path. Let me list down what each of the actors or the participants, contribute into the whole vocational education system. The first is, of course, the federal cantons, which is equivalent to the central state governments. As I said, they have a process of actually helping the industries to get the apprentice from the schools. So all the schools in their cantons and all the industries in these cantons, they put it together, and they help the whole process of, recruitment as well as confirmation between the industry and apprentice. The industry or the company actually has a contract with a 15-year-old apprentice. He actually has a contract for the next 3 to 4 years, where they're going to probably work for 30% of the time, productive time. The balance 70% goes into training, and this is serious training. It's a serious 8-hour training, theory, practical skills, soft skills, all blended into it. The cantons also participate by managing the whole assessment process so that there's a uniform standard across the country. As I said, they fund close to 50%. They also fund another organization, which I'll talk about, which sets the standards required for VET across the country. And that's called SWIVET, which I'll just talk about later. So this is the role they play, and they are not involved in content development. They are not involved in assessment. The whole content development, courseware development, and assessment is managed by the industry for the industry, which means it's very close to something like how the sector skills councils are doing. The idea of creating a courseware through the sector skills council is the input is coming from the industry, and the outcome is also meant for the industry. SWIVET is again a government organization, which is an individual, I would say a research and innovation VET institute, which does a lot of research, but primarily they play a role in training of the trainers and training of the assessors, and also building the standards and quality, the processes required for courseware development. And I'll tell you why these three are the most important aspects of achieving excellence and quality in VET. If you don't have the right trainers and the right qualified trainers, you could have the best courseware, the outcome will be low. If you don't have the right assessors, even if the training has been weak, the assessors can catch them. And assessment methodology itself for vocational education is completely different from an academic vocation assessment. You actually have to simulate the workplace, skills requirement and test the person for that workplace skill. If a person is doing a job on a lathe, it is not the job which is a focus. It's how does he plan his work? Does he keep the place clean? Does he plan his work? Does he actually clean after? Does he work? Does he test it while he's going through? All these are individual steps for excellence and quality, which is what is tested in the assessment. So the depth of assessment is actual simulation of what's happening in the shop floor. The industrial association, which is just all the members of a particular sector, there are multiple sectors, and each sector has created its own vocational courses for that sector. And they have bundled it because this is a 3 to 4 year course, so it's quite a broad-based course. The industrial association funds the courseware development. It also prepares the trainers and assessors for the courseware. Even if you have a course, There's a lot of work to be done across the country to train the trainers, train the assessors to be able to understand this whole concept of this course. Prepare the assessment papers and continuously align the courses between what the industry needs and what the course is providing. And this is a very important aspect because this is completely given to the industry. There may be vocations which are actually going out of need, and there may be new topics which are coming into the need. Who actually fine-tunes it and updates it on a continuous process and make sure that the industry demand and the courses are continuously aligned. Industries, like I said, they recruit happily so in Switzerland. Because they see the big value of the productivity gain which they're getting. They also make sure that the demand of the industry is what matches the supply of people who are getting educated. And this is a very beautiful thing. How do you ensure that the demand of the country and the education is matching with the demand? Yeah, both in numbers, quality and quantity. And this happens automatically. So it's a felt self kind of tuning mechanism within themselves. They also invest, as I said, in training, but they're able to get back the money in productive time. So the end, they get a huge number of apprentices which are world-class, high quality, readily deployable, full-time after 20 years of age. If you look at apprentices, it's a great win-win for them. The parents and students don't have to spend money after 16 years. The industry is actually taking them. They are getting stipend during those 4 years, so even they get some pocket money as they grow. And they're working in an industry to its standards in its processes. So they're already industry ready from a behavior point of view. In punctuality, in environment, in safety is built into the system. Quickly, I'll just spend 2 minutes on the slide. To summarize, the industrial association, the company, and the players are playing their own role. No one is spending money with each other. Everyone is playing their role, and the outcome comes into to excellence. And that's basically the strength of the Swiss system. We tested the system for 3 years in the first few years, 2009 to 11, and we see it's worked. We obviously did not copy the system as it is. We had adapted the content, we adapted the trainer's course, we adapted the assessor's course to Indian requirement, and we tested with the PPP model. We trained ITI teachers for the theory and the company instructors for the practicals, and the outcome has been excellent. I mean, they're very happy with it. But today what we have done, briefly, I can tell you that we have tried to broad base our offering to all models. The apprenticeship model at a corporate level, at the company level who are interested in the long-term, high-quality, world-class apprenticeship mode outcome, and the institute model with all the NSTC courses and the sector skills courses. We have the Swiss know-how, we have the ability to reuse it, we have a cooperation agreement, exclusive, which means we have the strength to bring all that into India in a fairly low-cost manner. So we are looking at company workshops to align with us, CSR institutes we can help when any other institute which wants to do world-class skill training is what we support. We act as a knowledge partner. We are not a trainer ourselves. We are master trainers, we are master content developers, and so on, but we support. And our interest is that in the next 3 to 5 years, we would probably have 100 institutes across India, not our own, whom we'll be supporting from a know-how point of view, and they'll be actually implementing. Thank you. I hope I was able to summarize the strength of the system.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chandrakumar. I think the unique feature of this initiative I see is that the selection based on liking and aptitude of the candidates. And the other thing is that the vocational part is embedded in the school education, start early in the school, and there lies the success of the scheme. With these two international experiences, now we move on to a totally new experience, new initiative, which I believe started before this national agenda of skill development gained momentum. And it's a pretty old initiative which has delivered success. It was started without the government support, and I'm not sure whether today also it runs on the government support, but this agency, they are operating with definitely the objective of not only developing skills, creating employability, but going beyond that and developing entrepreneurs too. So we move on to Mrs. Murali Kher, and who would present her Kherwadi skilling experience. Murali.
I would like to thank the Chamber for inviting an NGO in this corporate gathering. But first, let me be very honest. I'm very technology challenged. So I would request the people there to change the, when you will do that. Thank you. I represent Kherwadi Social Welfare Association, which is a social not-for-profit organization established 87 years back. But the project of Kherwadi Association, which is the main torchbearer or what has brought us into the national forefront, is the Yuva Parivartan project. Next. Yeah, the Yuva Parivartan project is for school dropouts, and we started this initiative in 1998. But to tell you before that is that I started the vocational training in 92 with a very small course called the para-nursing course. And today that is one of the best course of Kherwadi, wherein it was not called Yuva Parivartan. So my experience in this field is for over 30 years. And it was called not skill development, but vocational training. I would like you to go through these few slides about the history of Kherwadi or the organization through speed reading, really. It is founded by Mr. B.G. Kher, who was the first Prime Minister of Bombay State and Bombay Province. And we started Yuva Parivartan in 1998. After testing the model and tried to copy the government, SEBI government model, we realized that it is not inclusive but exclusive, and we changed the model to bring in make it inclusive. So anybody who could read and write, anybody who had a desire to work, anybody who desired to have a livelihood, anybody who wanted to have an income to support his family. Next. And today where we are in 17 states. We'll be going into Goa very soon. By I think October, November, we'll be in Goa. We are in 150 districts, 62 centers, and we conduct our main model of delivery is now become the camps, the model camps. In India is a very complex country, very geographically complex, and in every other way. And what we decided, we realized that our brick and mortar centers that we started with in Bandra East, where we have our head office, is not a doable model everywhere else. It's an expensive model. Expensive, not in the corporate sense, but by an NGO standard. Our cost of training a student for 3 months over 160 hours is 5,000. And I said, India cannot afford a 5,000 rupee model. We have to take a model, break it down, make it sustainable, and let us reach out. And then we started innovating into models that were deliverable, and that was the need of the country. We decided to put not our ideas, but to the need of the nation before our ideas. And we felt that there were, when we talk this magic figure of 550 million, out of that 250 million are only the graduates, the engineers, the doctors, and the graduates in arts and all, who are unemployable. Why? Because they do not have the skills for employability. We are only talking, I'm only focusing on the 300 million dropouts, because out of every 10 students, only 9 students drop out and 1 student reaches the 10th standard. This is the staggering figure. This was the shocking figure which we came to know in 1996. And when we say that, who's looking at this 300 million? The 300 million figure wasn't there, but just the 90% dropouts. I said, has anybody even looked at them? Has anybody even, it's the forgotten part of society. The government has forgotten, the community has forgotten, the society has forgotten, the educational system has forgotten this 300 million. And that is, I said, let's focus, because everybody talks of after 10th, after 12th, what will a boy do or a girl do? Has anybody said, what will a boy or a girl do after the 5th standard? After the 4th standard, after the 8th standard? No, it is not our concern, because these are considered lazy, useless, non-aspirational people who have no desire to do anything. It is wrong, totally wrong, because we sit in the urban cities and judge youth across the country by sitting in our glass houses. It is not so. They have aspirations, they have needs, they have wants. And now the TV has taken the wants right into their homes, into the tribal homes at Gadchiroli or Dantewada, or in Kashmir, in Kupwara and other districts of Kashmir. But we do not think of them. We only sit in our urban centers or in Delhi and write policies, draft policies, which are not reaching the grassroots and can never reach the grassroots. Next, please. Next. Yes, what do? We have, we tried out different models, we have experimented, and being an NGO, we had, with no government funding ever, we've stayed away from the government for many, many years. Since 1928, we have stayed away from government funding. Because government brings around rules and regulations which stifle you, not help you to grow. And so we thought that an NGO, as long as we can do without government, we will survive. We started these models, we conduct, these are the processes that we do. But what we found was that the people, the boys, the youth that we were addressing had problems. They were not ready to come to the center. They are not ready to take learn a skill. They were not ready to stay on and drop out. They are habitual dropouts. That doesn't mean that he's a bad boy or he has no IQ. And as an NGO, we thought we could make a difference and mentor them. And what we have found is that, which we are asking corporates, that if you invest so much funds in HR for management skill building and employment enhancement, why do you not do the same HR management skill building or mentoring for the workers? If just a 2 to 3 week or a 1 month program of hand-holding, mentoring is done at the very minimal cost, and you will find that you will be able to retain the youth that you have taken at the floor shop level. And this is what we do. We train our youth, mobilize them from the slums, from the tribal youth, the rural youth, and bring them to our centers, give them a course which is maybe 80 hours to 180 hours, and then try and use the apprenticeship model which works for the non-formal, unorganized sector. Because I'm talking of fitting my 300 million youth into the 90% informal and unorganized sector. You all represent only the 8% of the organized sector. What is 8% for a country like India, which is so geographically spread from Kashmir to Kanyakumari to Northeast to Rajasthan? How can you forget the 90% informal sector, which can offer about 99% of the jobs to these 300 million. And that is the sector that we look at. And that is where we found that we could fit in our students. But what is happening? The other way is happening. Now the organized sector is coming to us. We have severe shortage. The catering college cannot give us the youth that we need. The hospitality industry, the facility management industry, all the service industry, whether the air conditioning, all the machine tools, nobody, there's a severe shortage of youth that will work at this level. And why is that? Because the Swiss model works in Switzerland, but it's very difficult to work in India because we have problem of dignity of labor. A man even in the tribal area says, "Humko manager banna hai. I want to wear a suit and sit in front of a computer in an air-conditioned office." He wants to be like you without having the he does not understand कि आपने क्या किया है और मैंने क्या, फर्क तो कुछ नहीं लगता है. I wear a suit today and tomorrow I can sit in front of a computer or in front of a laptop. He doesn't realize what has gone in grooming you for that job. But the aspirations are very much the same. Next, please. Next. Yes, what we are talking of is, if the government pays to the grassroots, be realistic. The grassroots are where the NGOs work. And NGOs have an understanding of what is society, what is the community, how are the people. Their influence on the people is a major factor that could influence or change their mindset. When we talk of mindset, many people say that we cannot retain people because they don't have a mindset. What is mindset? Do we have our own mindset? We also have so many attitudes. I'm not going to take up this job. I want only in a company that is a corporate with a worldwide presence, because I have just finished my IIT. I have an attitude because I have come out of IIT Bombay and I would like to be in the world's top 10 companies. Not in an Indian company. So why are you talking about mindset of the lower classes? So we have to be more realistic and think how I can enhance the skills of these people. And what we have found is the retention of our students when we have prepared them for the apprenticeship with starting salaries of 8,000 has been wonderful. I mean, students with just a phone call, with just one visit from our office to say, how are you doing? How is the boss treating you? Has been enough for him to say, I'm going to continue in this job. And now companies, the organized sector companies are coming because they are desperate. The demand is very high and the supply is low. So industry has to wake up to new methods of hiring and upgrading or training youth that may be at entry level. Even the ITIs are not been able to supply the students that the industry needs. Let industry invest, tie up with ITIs, enhance the skills of their teachers, and also meet them halfway. You cannot sit in the industry and say, "Bacche lao, workers lao." It cannot happen. And the industry has to, because one day it will be very desperate in the next 10 years, I think, and it needs a wake-up call. Next, please. Next. Yes, we are experts in mobilization. That's why we can reach 100,000. Today we have we have very professionalized our NGO. We have an academic council where we prepare our own manuals and handbooks. We have about 35 manuals and handbooks. We have our own examination and certification system and a question bank where all our centers, we have about 200 partners that are franchisee, but it's a not-for-profit model of franchisee. Our students are examined whether he is in Kupwara or he is in Dantewada. The examination paper goes from the head office and it is conducted in that local center. We have a team of about 500 auditors, all chartered accountants, impartial or chartered accountants hired from the local chartered accountancy private companies to audit. We have academic audit, we have quality audit, we have asset audit, and we have operational audits. Yeah, next. Yes, 70% of India still lives in the rural area, and we are very, very urban-centric. We too were like that for the first 5 years. We were only thinking of Bombay, Pune, and then we said, no, the India is not in Bombay. The whole of India is not in Pune, not in Delhi. And that's when we decided, let us test our model, because we had very limited sources of money. In fact, we don't know how the first 5 years of our Yuva Parivartan must have gone. With very, very little money, like 40,000 rupees, 50,000 rupees. Today our model is about 20 crore rupees model, that is our annual budget, because our aim is 1 million. We hope to reach 1 million. And because we cannot rest on our laurels that yes, NSDC has recognized us. We have followed all the government thing. We have the Quality Council of India. We have Mr. Dilip Chinoy coming to us. Give me courses that I can recognize. Like an example I'll give you, we did a course of 8 days. I mean, I'm just bringing you down to this thing, in which we conducted in Kashmir, where we work in Anantnag. It was apple grading, apple grading and apple packing. It was an 8-day course, and which we did for about 200 students over a month. And the students they were so poor, they could not even afford to pay a single rupee. But we said, we'll pilot it. And it was a successful, all the 200 students got employment, because our man who had gone to Anantnag noticed all the apples lying on the floor, on the ground. I said, क्यों नहीं आप उठाते? Saying, कोई लड़के ही नहीं है, packing कैसा करे, Bombay कैसे पहुंचाए? And then we said, can we do this course? He said, please do it. And we conducted it among the boy. But do you know the income, the minimum or the maximum income of a Kashmiri boy is 30 rupees a day. That's the maximum he can earn. That's 1,500 rupees a month is the maximum. That is the payment that a boy or a woman who is doing embroidery receives. And that's why we realize that Kashmir also can work with Yuva Parivartan. And we started centers in Kashmir, in Anantnag. In fact, you will not believe it's about 50 kilometers only from the border. And our audit teams have visited, and their trust or belief in our organization went 100-fold when they saw what Yuva Parivartan could even reach this border post of where you have to leave the car about 2-3 kilometers away from the last rubble road and cross 2-3 hills to reach the center, where there is no water, there is no electricity, no human beings except the few villagers that live in those 10 huts or 10 homes that are there. That is what I felt, that yes, we have a large task ahead, and if we do not pay attention as an NGO, and we do not awaken the new NGOs, the other NGOs into going into skilling, it's a mission, it's a passion with Khirwadi. And I can't tell you how we are now. We said, how is 1 million? We have Dr. Mashirkar as our chairman. And he said, what are you sitting with 100,000 people and patting your back? India is huge. Talk of 1 million, go to 10 million by 2020. So that is how we have now going into e-learning. We are now digitizing our courses, putting them, we've found a free platform. When you know an NGO works, that's one thing. When you have the passion and you are very honest in your mission, just people come, money comes. And that is the wonderful experience. We've got an international platform that has offered full management of your e-learning, digitization platform for learning all across India. But We realized, we thought we will do it through the smartphone, and India, you see everybody, right, the jhadu wali has a phone. But we were surprised when we conducted a survey right in Alibag, which is practically one of the closest to Bombay. And one phone is shared even in Alibag between 6 people. So we said, no, India is not ready for the smartphone, nor for the 4G or the 6G. It's still a long way to go. So we have now decided to modify our e-learning model. Still there is trade relevancy. Yes, we need to be relevant to the trades, what is the industry requirement, and that's why we have been tweaking our model, changing our model. We have been, innovations is our biggest asset. We keep on changing what does not work. Even if it has cost us some money, we decide to disband it and keep on looking for new avenues of service for the 300 million. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam. It's really been an unique, initiative, a dedicated initiative. Yesterday, somebody was asking that a lot of skilling will happen and is happening in the, urban areas, and what's happening in rural areas. I think these are the kind of initiatives which are being developed in rural Indias, and the success rate what they have is really laudable, and I'm sure their dedicated services will help in the entire skilling mission. With that, may I now request Vandana to present her thoughts and her experiences. I would just request Vandana that if you can take 10 minutes so that I can, pardon me?
It's going to be tough.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay.
I'll see if I can cut it down. Okay.
We also have to take
Sure,
some questions. So
yeah, I get it.
Please.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to Dr. Sardeshmukh for inviting me to speak. I was born in England. I qualified as a chartered accountant in the UK. I then spent 10 years in Eastern Europe before coming here to India. So I've now been in India for 10 years. The accent never changes, fir bhi dil hai Hindustani. I hoped I'd get a laugh, but I think we're too close to lunchtime. Okay, so just very briefly, my company is called Get Through Guides. I moved here, so I've been in learning and development, very similar actually to Dean. I left industry fairly early on and went into learning and development. Based here in India, we do two things. We develop content and we also do training for organizations. I'm also on the board of the UK India Business Council, so I work very closely with them on promoting skills between India and the UK. I work with Prince Philip and the Queen on a Commonwealth leadership programme, and we do roundtables, etc., with organisations like the Maratha Chamber, British Council, etc. I was just going to put this up. Now, I know when you look at those companies, many of you are thinking, that's really not, sort of vocational education. But actually, for most of them, at the lowest levels, it is about vocational education. They have people coming in at 10th, they have people coming in at 12th, and they have people who have done degrees, but those degrees, honestly, by the admission of the individuals and the organisations, are the equivalent of them having done 10th or 12th in certain places. So we've worked with lots of the people right at the bottom of the pyramid to look at how we can make them more employable. So I just want to briefly talk about the UK India Business Council and what they're doing, because the presentation is quite integrated with what we do and what they do. So very similar to what Dean said earlier, where the UK India Business Council believes that it's got a lot of knowledge that it wants to share with India, and it's been through the vocational system for many, many years, for centuries in fact. There are trades and guilds in the UK. There's the ones that come to mind are there's a trade of tailoring, there's a trade of waste management, plumbers, laundry, laundry washing, there is actually a trade and a guild for laundry washing, so to learn how to do it properly. So there's a huge history of this in the UK, and it's all about how do we not reinvent the wheel? How do we just, pick up things and make it look at how we can make it work here in India? I think the first quote that's up here is really, really good. It's from Richard Branson. He says, "You don't learn to walk by following rules. You learn it by doing and by falling over. And you do it by your parents not saying, 'Oh my God, you fell over,' but actually saying, 'No, try again,' and you getting the confidence." And that's very much how vocational education has kind of grown in the UK. That's the only quote I'll go to on this one. I wanted to talk very briefly about my experiences in the UK and in Central and Eastern Europe, the challenges that we had, and then the solutions that we brought in. Just checking time. Okay. The first thing is, just like people say in India, in the UK and in Eastern Europe, theoretical learning from school. So the way that companies and the vocational institutes have got around this is that they've created really interesting content. So they've looked at how do we build case studies, how do we do simulations, and how do we have really good teachers teaching it? So what makes a good teacher? So they really concentrated on that area. The next area was no understanding of how to behave in the workplace. So we've got the skills to go into the workplace, but how do we behave? How is it different from being at home or being at college? So what they did was they created induction courses and on-the-job training, so work shadowing, interning, which really gave people an idea of watching how people behave and then simulating that behavior. This was really interesting. People were unconsciously responsible for their own learning. What I mean by that is it's really expensive to live in the UK and Central and Eastern Europe. And I know it's tough in India, but it's no tougher for the bottom of the pyramid in the UK. And so people knew that they had to learn in order to start earning more. So earn while you learn was a big thing in the UK and still is a big thing in the UK. And having incentives for not just passing, but getting a higher mark or getting a better assessment was something that people really looked forward to doing because it could help them live a bit better. And also, people were unconsciously flexible in the UK. What I mean by that is, and I think Dean will back me up with this, when I was 9, I had to make my own lunch. I had to iron my own shirts. I had my own key to get into the house. I would come home to an empty house. That's just the way it was. That's what we had to do. We had family responsibilities. We had cleaning responsibilities. We had so much that we had to do, so that when we went into the workplace, we were already pretty flexible. If we were told to do anything, we would just do it. So in terms of how vocational colleges took that forward, they would do a lot of that what-if scenario, how do we work as teams, and bring that into the DNA, so that when we went into the workplace, it was even easier for us to adapt and assimilate. So armed with all this great knowledge, I came to India thinking, yes, we're going to be able to do lots in skills. And I realized that there was a big difference between education and skills. And really where performance comes is in between that. The word education itself means to bring out, from the Latin educos, to bring out that which is within. And skills is an expertise. And you need both of them. You can't just have one without the other, because it doesn't work. And when we talk about people not being employable, we're actually saying that they don't have that education bit. They're not bringing out what's within them. And I think, Mrilani, your point really brings that out. So we did two things. At time. We did two things. We worked with the BPO and the shared service industry, which was bringing in international standards, because they were all doing work for the US, the UK, and Europe. And then we worked with the Insurance Institute of India as well, where they needed materials created to help get their pass rates up. So I'm going to go through both of those very quickly. With the shared service industry, we started with a pilot of 40 and went up to 120 students. We did this in 3 cities and we had abysmal pass rates. And we were miserable. We were just like, what's wrong? We thought, you know, the material's really great, our trainers are okay, so what went wrong? So what we did was we went back and we went and spent lots of time with the students to work out what the issues were. And a lot of things came up. And we summarized this with the UK India Business Council. There's a lot of thinking, as was said earlier by Mrs. Kher, there's a lot of thinking that happens underneath the surface. And what you see is the result of that in terms of action. And the challenge was that because people didn't think that this qualification was going to be useful for them, that it would make any difference in their lives, and working was actually quite tough, they didn't really put the effort in. And that made, that was a massive realization for us that, you know, it doesn't matter how good the materials are, but if the student is not thinking in the right way, it's not going to work. You might as well be talking to a stone. So what do you need to do? And it goes back to mindset shift. How do you help change their attitudes? How do you get them to learn that learning is really useful and it's going to be helpful to them in the future? If you don't do that first, they are not going to be able to do what you want them to do in the workplace. I need about 3 minutes, sorry. Okay, so bearing this in mind, we realized that this was the same problem with the trainers. The trainers often were not being paid a lot of money, and they were like, this is a job, this is something I have to do, I have to go in and I have to teach. And it was exactly the same issue with the trainers. At the end of the day, we've got Teachers' Day on Saturday, and I want to say to everyone here, Happy Teachers' Day, because we're all teaching all the time. So whether it's a student or whether it's a teacher, we go through exactly the same thing. So what we realized we had to do was capture the high excitement at the beginning of the program. We needed to deal with the confrontation that they would have, like, I don't understand this, this is boring, I don't see how it's going to be helpful. We needed to deal with that. And we needed really motivated teachers to get them through that difficult time. And then get them up to the stage where they could not just do their job, but really perform. So what we did was we started talking to the students and said, listen, when you come on this course, you're not just learning basic accounting or basic banking, and we're mapped to the NOS standards for the BPOs. We're teaching you time management. We're teaching you punctuality. You have to be here on time. We're teaching you articulation and communication. We're teaching you flexibility. We're teaching you reliability. And when they realized that the course was not just a certificate course, but it was giving them all those other skills, they then started learning in a much better way. So we created a model where the pass rates went up from 35% to 96%. Within 1 year, or within less than 1 year, we're doing over 1,000 for many of the BPOs, so 1,000 in each of the BPOs, 10 cities across India now. And it really is a focus of looking at the student, what do they need? Looking at the trainers, what do they need? And how do we create training and projects which is going to be useful for both trainers and the students? See, if you look at the intersection between training and projects and trainers, that intersection is academic. If you look at the intersection between students and training projects, that's theoretical. And if you look at training and the trainers and the students together, that intersection is motivation. But if you look at where they meet in the middle, that's the sweet spot. That's where you've got motivated and employable students. So we developed this model where we spoke to the trainers. Every 2 weeks, we would come on a conference call. We would get them to speak about what they were finding difficult, what questions they were getting asked, how they were dealing with difficult students, and the trainers would coach each other. And we had all the students also once they'd passed out, mentoring the previous ones. So we would have a model of each one teach one. We paired up the students who found it very difficult with the students who were finding it easy, who were getting bored. We'd put them sitting next to each other to give each other advice, and it worked beautifully because all the students effectively became teachers. So we did this model of engage, empower, and enable, and all the way through, we trained our trainers on how to not just be content specialists, but to actually be coaches and facilitators, so that we had ready pools of skilled resources all across. With the Insurance Institute of India, very quickly, their problem was that people weren't passing their exams. So we went from designing one book, and we now do more than 50 books. We've got over 1 million people in India using the textbooks we create for them. What we did was use 2 really important international concepts. One is Gagne's 9 events of instruction, worth looking up on the internet, PowerPoint presentations available. Those 9 events of instruction, neuro-linguistic programmers have looked at what works in learning, and this is the best way to do it. We looked at what's in it for me. And we also used Bloom's taxonomy to try and work out what skills were needed at each stage. It's been very, very successful, but the problem we've got now is the individuals have got great knowledge, but when they go out to the field, when they say to, let's go into a third-tier city, and they say to a farmer, you need to get some kind of insurance. If anything happens to you, what's going to happen to your family? And the wife says, don't get this insurance, because if you do, I'm superstitious, it means something's going to happen to you. Now, how can you put that into a textbook? So, although we've dealt with how do they really understand insurance policies, how do we put into a textbook how to understand the mindset of their customer? So that's the bit we're working on with them at the moment. Very briefly, focus areas for the UK, they really are very keen. UK skills providers are very keen on working with Indian companies. Whether it's curriculum development, capacity building, changing perceptions, they have all the modules available. It's just about getting the 2 groups together. And I know that they're very involved with the NSDC as well. There are lots of different programs that are running in India, but I think we've touched the tip of the iceberg. I think there's millions more programs that could be developed. The big ones are here: City and Guilds, Pearson, Association of Colleges. They're all operating in India already, but I think there's a lot more that can be done. The major problem that they have is the third one here. The partnerships in India, generally the NSDC partners are either too small or too big. And as a result, either the small ones want pro bono, free help, and the large ones really want something for nothing, and it doesn't work. So what I would say to you is, all companies out there spend so much money on research and development, and they create these great products and they put patents on it and they make money from it. You need to understand the most valuable asset that you've got is your people. And if you're not willing to train your trainers, if you're not willing to train your students and care for your students, they are never going to develop the return on investment that you need. So with that, I will close. I hope that's given you a flavour for what's worked between India and the UK, and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vandana. I'm sorry for making you rush through your presentation, which was really interesting, and quite a few points emerge out of that. And I think the Vandana's model, which he has developed for skilling and all that, and I think the unique feature of that is the research-based modules, and every time there is evolution and assessment of that module, and then further changes are carried out, and that ensures the highest success rate. Thank you very much, Vandana. I straightway open the session for questions, and I see one lady sitting there. Please. Yeah. No, mic is coming.
in UK, do you think the sector skill councils have been successful? Do you think that the corporates are giving value to the certificates given by sector skill council? Do they recruit based on that?
Yeah, I think in general, the Sector Skills Council in the UK have been successful. And the reason for that, I touched on it during the presentation, really is that it's about the focus of industry and employer engagement. So as a Sector Skills Council, our role is not just to feed into industry and tell them what we think they need. It's to find out what they actually need and try and help government and training providers provide something that fits that need. So from my own experience, that's where that success comes from. And I say that not just from working as a Sector Skills Council, but as an apprentice.
Okay. And what about Swiss?
As I said, the role of a Sector Skills Council is part of the Industrial Association. It's just a division of the Industrial Association. I think it's successful, for sure, because that's what is the model in Switzerland. But I'll tell you why it's successful. The most important thing is that, when they develop the content, they develop the content. See, they don't develop just the qualification profile, as we are doing. They develop the content also. And that makes a big difference, because the content development methodology is based on the very close study of the industrial need. And that is done in a very elaborate manner. So the course content itself is developed by the industry or Sector Skills Council. The assessment is also based on the same content. Only the certification and standards are coming from the top of the organization. So that way it's a very, very aligned system. It has to be accepted and is accepted, and that is the one which runs Switzerland.
And they also do the training of the trainers.
They don't do the training of the trainers. That's why I said there's an independent organization called SWIBET, which I mentioned, which is across all sectors. There are probably about 50, 60 sectors. And they develop the standards for content development, they develop the trainers, assessment, and they conduct the training.
That's a government body?
So that's a government-funded, self-sustaining body. And which means that the pedagogy training of a Swiss teacher or a Swiss instructor is the same across sector. Whether you're a hotel or so on, because the pedagogic methods are researched and developed as one single standard.
Thank you.
I was just going to add, it's almost the same in the UK. For a lot of the sectors, the sector skills councils or the institutes talk to all their members and say, what new skills have come up over the past 2 years that you'd like to see reflected in the assessments? And they build those in, they build the content in as well, and then they give it out to training providers.
Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. My question is to Mr. Chandrakumar. What, according to me, the success formula for Swiss model is basically the ability of engaging young students, almost at the age of 14 or 15, and they can recruit those people on the job. Whereas in Indian context, if you say to protect the child exploitation, we have a law for child labor where we cannot engage. Yeah. So is there any challenge for that?
Yes and no. In fact, when we had designed adapting the Swiss system, we have kept as a 10+3 model. They have like a 9+4 model for the vocational training. So 10 standard is fine. The age is beyond. Of course, there is a 14 limit for child labor, and there's also a 16 limit for industrial workers. There are certain professions you can't have even at 14. So that way, I think we are looking at equating as 10+3. But I should add that, what you mentioned about a success, I think the biggest success in Switzerland has been the industry's involvement, which is not there in India. We're not used to it. For the last 60 years, we are not used to it. We just want ready-made, 100% world-class technicians free of charge, and then I'll use them. But That is one. And the second most important for the industries to participate is government is designed a system where the industry invests, but it gets getting back. So that way they're not really wasting money or spending, but yes, there is a cycling of money going on, but they don't lose. And the end of it, they get a fantastic product.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Just adding to that, in the UK, if you became an apprentice at, say, age 16, you wouldn't be allowed to work, for example, in a petrochemical facility on a shift basis until you were 18. So there are some restrictions, but that doesn't stop employers engaging with students at a school level. So lots of employers will engage even below, well below at 12, 10 and below, just to give people an overview of what's out there in terms of the industry and try and develop their interest in those opportunities going forward.
Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, I'm Srikanth. I just wanted to ask a question to UK and US both model. I actually have studied the model as an academician and the researcher. In India, in context with the skill development and the awareness, we have recently done one survey to understand who is aware about the NSDC. So we have asked 100 politicians, but we came to know that 11 politicians are aware, or MPs and MLAs are aware about the NSDC. Then bureaucracy, 400 people, only 28 know the NSDC. And the 400 youth that we have discussed, so only I guess 58 out of them are aware about the NSDC. I just wanted to know from the both countries' successful formulas, what they have done to make this successful advertising, campaigning to reach to the end user where he is getting involved in such kind of activity as a mechanism. Am I clear?
Do you want to start?
So what I know is that it all starts at school. There are careers counsellors at schools. There are labs which are set up, which are connected to the internet, where as soon as you type in, they do some kind of test to look at your aptitude. And then as soon as it says, you'd be suited for something like plumbing, it will immediately go to the links of those of those organisations. So the schools are therefore aware of it. I would say most of government is aware of the Sector Skills Council and are involved.
I think as an extension of that, as well as the engagement at a lower level, in the UK you have a government body, the UKCS, UK Commission for Education and Skills, and they link directly to the Sector Skills Council, so we report directly into them. When we develop things like national occupation standards, it's that body that looks at the governance of those and accredits them accordingly. So in essence, in the UK, we're working directly with government as opposed to being a separate entity. Although we are an entity on our own, we're almost integrated into what they do and what industry does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. I know what you're saying about, I guess it's more visibility of NSTC. I don't think that's the only problem we're having as a country. Like she also mentioned, I mean, more than 90% of our country's workers are from the informal sector. They're not certified, they're not, even this building, I'm not sure, many informal sector workers would have built this and we are comfortably sitting inside it. So it's a huge number. We are talking about, the rest is only about 10%. But if India has to become world class in its offering to the world and become competitive in the world, this 10% has to increase. Hopefully in the next 30 years it should increase to 50%. The certification, when the certification is not a need, and when there is no need where the industry is not, most industries even today employ a lot of informal workers, not directly, through their contractors. You take a construction company or even a manufacturing company, most of the suppliers, how many industries are forcing their suppliers to say they have to be certified by ITI or NSTC? They're not doing, and it's a commercial, it's a financial issue. Either we have to, kind of get into a force mode, saying this is the minimum required certification which is required, which is not so good to force, because as far as you're getting quality, a certificate is of no value. But at the same time, we have to create the awareness that if the end outcome, what we expect out of our country, it has to be higher, then you have to have the inputs also to be higher. So NSDC alone, publicizing NSDC is not going to change anything. Industry, parents, students are the people who are going to make a difference.
One last question.
Can I answer on this? In India, the trained, skilled employees are only 4.6% of the whole labor force. So, where it is 68 in the UK, 68% of the labor force is skilled and trained and certified, and up to 96% in South Korea. So we have a long, long journey to reach even the 50%. And government of Maharashtra and most of the other governments have offered vocational training back again with great force, giving them financial help in schools. But there are no takers, because the people whom you think should learn how to become a plumber or become a technician, the parents say, nahi. हमारा बेटा प्लम्बर नहीं बनेगा, हमारा बेटा मोटर मैकेनिक नहीं बनेगा, वो साहब बनेगा. So there are no takers. I have spoken at many schools trying to introduce vocational training, but the parents' body fights tooth and nail. We want our children only to learn through the books. So we have a lot of work to do. NSDC is doing its bit. It has a budget. The NSDC has a national helpline number 1800, which is a free number, which is advertised more in the north than I have not seen it in India, Maharashtra, where you can call and say, I want, the label or the ad says, I want to become a jeweler, I want to learn diamond sorting, or I want to be a technician, call this number. So NSDC is doing it through Doordarshan. Several Sundays over, I think, 2 years, they have been promoting NSDC and skill sector councils. So it will take many more years to reach.
Yeah, one last question and a quick question,
Yes.
quick answer.
Just wanted to understand in a different perspective, in terms of technology and the business cycles or the business segments changing in different countries like Switzerland and UK, how does the effort of reskilling happen, and whether there are any parallels for India in terms of manufacturing to services?
Reskilling is how does reskilling happen?
I take it you're talking about as a job role or as an industry changes.
Yes.
So in the UK, for example, as a Sector Skills Council who are responsible for the development of national occupation standards, it was touched on earlier that that's an ongoing process. That's not something that we develop and say for the next 50 years, that's what the standard will be. We review it on an annual basis with industry to say, has that role changed? Has the technology changed? And if it has, we then redevelop the standard and the curriculum that goes with it and change the qualification. And then that identifies a skills gap. And because of that, you're then in a position where you can develop people to say, how do we move somebody from this position to the new, whether it's a new job role or whether it's an additional skill that they need to have to move that forward.
Thank you. I thank all the panelists for their wonderful inputs, and the session has really been interesting. Thanks a lot for joining us today afternoon. Thank you very much, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Sir Deshmukh. I would like to bring to your notice that there is a group of VIM students who is sitting there behind along with Professor Jayashree and Professor Ashish. They are uploading the Skillconclave Facebook page and the Twitter account very frequently, every hour or so. So in case you want to log in and check on if you've missed any session over there, you're requested to have a look at it. Also, many of you have been coming to us and asking for presentation. With the permission of the speakers, if they allow, we'll assemble all the PowerPoint presentations on one CD, and in case any one of you wants it, you can collect it from our office. We break for lunch. All of us assemble here at sharp 2 p.m. Thank you so much.